Hello everyone. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do an indoor project. I'm getting low on sausage, and so I decided that today, since it's being so hot outside, I think it's 90 degrees, that I'll stay indoors and get some things done in here that I've been wanting to get done. And one of the things is I've been wanting to make some more pork sausage, hot Italian sausage to be exact. So I'm going to walk you through the steps on what I do to make sausage. I used to be intimidated just by the idea of making sausage, but after watching some videos and then experimenting with it for the last couple of years, it's pretty simple. Nothing that I'm going to show you is over the top or just extreme. It's just very basic sausage making, and I'm sure that there's plenty of ways that I can enhance it or change it. But what I do, I like. It's pretty simple and straightforward. But if you've got some ideas that you can share with me, I would love to hear from you in the comments. So please leave me a comment and give me some suggestions. But I'm going to share with you on how I make hot Italian pork sausage. The seasoning mix I use is Uncle Jim's Homestead Gourmet Specialties Spices. I'm using his hot Italian sausage mix, and what I like about this is that it's chemical free. It's all natural ingredients, and it's good stuff. And on the back he provides all the instructions on what you need to do and how to mix it. And at the bottom of the package is his web address, unclejimshomestead.com. I highly recommend you go out and visit his web page and look at some of the other spices he has. They're very good. I've been using these for the past year, and I really like the mix. I like that it's chemical free, and I like the taste of it, and it really turns out to be a good product. He's not sending me free samples. I'm not a paid advertisement for him. I really like his stuff. It's really good stuff, and so I'm just passing that along to you and recommend that you go out and check out his stuff. It's pretty good ingredients. So this packet right here is enough to mix up 5 pounds. I've got about 11 pounds of meat that I picked up from Costco, about 20 bucks for this. And when I make sausage, I use boneless pork shoulder or pork butt. And this is 11 pounds. I'll trim off a little bit, and I'll just mix up two of these packets to make up 10 pounds. So this is the first step, is to get yourself some pork. You can use spare ribs, whatever you want to use a pork product for your sausage, and some seasoning mix. So the next step that we need to do is go ahead and trim off the fat and trim up this packet of meat right here. When I cut the meat, there is quite a bit of some fat. I do leave most of it, but if there's just a big chunk of fat, I like to trim that off. But all I'm going to do now is cut the meat up into about chunks like this, and then this will fit into my grinder very well. So that's what I'm going to do next, is just go ahead and cut the meat up into the appropriate size. Okay, well that didn't take long. I cut up the first roast. I've got a little bit of meat left over. I've trimmed off some excess fat, and I've got exactly 5 pounds. So I'll go ahead and do this with the second roast, get another 5 pounds out of it, and then I'll have 10 pounds for the 2 batches that I'm going to mix up. And I plan on mixing these up together. I just wanted to make sure that the poundage was correct based upon the seasoning. Again, it's all, the seasoning pack is 4 or 5 pounds, so I just want to make sure that I'm as close as possible to get the true flavor out of the seasoning. Okay, as you can see, I've got 10 pounds of meat cut up. I've weighed it out, and I've trimmed off some of the excess fat that I thought was too much fat, the pieces. So what I'd like to do now is, since this is all cut, I'd like to put this into the freezer so that the meat firms up, so that when we get to the next step, which is putting it through the grinder on the initial grind, before we add any seasoning, we grind the meat up first to mix the meat. And with the meat being a little bit firmer, it cuts easier going through the blade. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to put this in the freezer and then go ahead and get set up for the next step, which is putting it through the grinder. I would like to take a minute out of the process here and just put a note in here, or bring it up in conversation, if you will, is that when you are doing sausage and you read the books and watch the videos, they talk about cleanliness and dealing with pork and making sure that everything is clean. When I go from one step to the next, I always stop and clean everything up. So I just got done cleaning the meat, and before I stuff it, I'll stop and I'll clean everything thoroughly. So I've already cleaned my cutting board and my knives. And actually underneath the cutting board in the sink, I've got the things ready for the grinder itself. And they're sitting in boiling water with just a little bit of bleach to kill any bacteria. Though they were thoroughly washed and placed in the dishwasher before I put them away, before I use them again, I always make sure that I kind of sterilize them, clean them again before I start the next process. So I just wanted to put a note, disclaimer, whatever you want to call it, that in between stages it's always good to clean everything and make sure that everything's clean going forward. Let's talk about the next step here. The next step in preparing the sausage is to go ahead and grind the meat. And what you're going to do is you're going to grind up your 5 pounds or your 10 pounds and grind it up all together before you mix in any of your seasoning. And what this does is it gets the meat down to a consistent form before you mix in your seasoning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to first grind the meat up so that it becomes out to more like hamburger, because we're taking it out of a rough form and putting it into a grind meat status. Now, I just wanted to quickly note or say something about grinders. When I first started making sausage, I actually had the old hand crank type that clipped onto the edge of the counter, and I was grinding the meat that way because I didn't think that I would be getting into it, but I wanted to try it, and it turned out pretty good. So I then went to a KitchenAid, and there's an attachment that you can put on your KitchenAid here, and it's in a grinder, and that worked as well, worked very well. But when I started processing my own deer and other animals, when I go hunting, I eventually ended up upgrading to a more professional or higher end grinder. And you don't need to have a higher end grinder. You can go and to a garage sale, a barn sale, or you can even get them online, the old hand style crank grinders, and they work just as well. But I wanted to at least say that you can start off at one level and then slowly work your way up to the next. So that's what I did. I've been doing this for I think 4 or 5 years now, so it took me a little while to slowly build up from one device to the next, but I just wanted to point out that there's different levels of grinders, and you don't have to have all the fancy machinery to do this. Okay, so the next step here is to just take the meat and grind it up. I've already ground up the first 5 pound batch. I'll grind up the next set, or the next 5 pounds. And so it's pretty simple. We turn on the grinder and it sends it through on a rough cut blade, and we'll just do this one time. We'll send it all through, then we'll add our seasoning and we'll mix it in thoroughly, and then we'll run it back through the grinder on a finer blade so that it gets mixed in even more. So I'm going to go ahead and run it through the grinder, and just so you know, gloves are optional if you choose to. There you go. That didn't take very long at all. We've got 5 pounds ground up. I'll go ahead and clean out the chute here, and then I'll mix the seasoning, and then we'll run it through one more time. Okay, so the meat has now been seasoned, and it's run through the grinder once. I seasoned it, and now it's ready to be run through again. I got a little finer cutting blade in here, and now we'll just run it through again. Now with the meat being more ground up now, it won't fall into the hole as easily, say that 3 times fast, as easily as it did before. So I'm going to use this stuffer here that falls down into the hole but doesn't touch the blade, but it allows me to push the meat into the grinder. So we'll go on to the next phase, which is the second grinding of the meat. Now that we've got the meat ground up and seasoned, the next thing to do is to stuff it into the casings. And there are many ways of stuffing it. If you go out to YouTube and look at them, you'll see plenty of videos. I've seen a video where somebody was actually stuffing it by hand, and it was so uniformed, I would be afraid to attempt to stuff it by hand. The second option is you can use your grinder. Go ahead and put your meat in same way that you were grinding it. You take the blade out, and now the meat's coming through, and it's just forcing through. Now I personally find using the grinder a little difficult. One is that the consistency, or I should say the consistent pressure that's needed to keep it flowing and holding this, I guess I'm not coordinated enough. I find it too difficult. And with this being off the table so high, trying to keep it so that it lays nice and lays straight without breaking the casing, again, I have difficulties in doing that. So what I want to show you is I have a sausage stuffer dedicated just for that. The place where the sausage comes out is a little bit lower, so that when I crank this handle, there's pressure, constant pressure coming through, and steady pressure all the way around the tube, the cylinder here, and it pushes out. And in doing so, I'm able to keep constant pressure going into the casing, keep uniform measurements or the amount of meat going into the casing, and then it can lay nicely here on the counter. So I find this much more easier. Again, you can hand stuff it, you can use your grinder. I personally find using the sausage stuffer much more easier. So let me show you how that's done. Take a minute and talk about casings. You got a couple of different options that I'm aware of. There's probably more, but the two that I'm familiar with is man-made and natural casings. This is something that, is, again, like I just said, is man-made. I don't prefer these, though they come with some of the kits that I order for seasonings and or the different styles of sausage you can make. And so it comes with a kit. To me, the casing tastes like paper. So I don't particularly care for the texture that these have. Now, I much prefer hog casings, and I buy mine at Butcher and Packer Supply Company, and you can find them online. I don't think I have. Oh yeah, butcher-packer.com is the web page, and I order these off of them. They ship them right to me, and they're pretty good. They're packed in salt, and so all you have to do is soak them in lukewarm water for about 20 minutes before you stuff your sausage, and it becomes very pliable and it's easy to work with. So I find the texture of the casing of hog casing versus man-made is so much better, as well as the taste. Now, can somebody really taste the difference? Because maybe it's the texture, I just kind of leave it as, okay, it tastes differently in one casing over the other. So I just happen to have these because they come with some of the sausage recipes and packages that I order online, but I just prefer to use hog casing, and they're easy to work with. So let these soak for a few minutes, and then we'll get ready to stuff the sausage. One of the nice features about having this sausage stuffer is that as you push down, there's air within the meat. And so as you push down, there's this little valve here that allows the air to escape going into the casing as you bring the sausage into the casing. So that's a nice feature. When you use the grinder, there's air that gets in there, and you kind of have to prick your casing afterwards to get some of that air out of there. So going with a dedicated sausage stuffer, in my opinion, is a lot better. Now when we get down to putting the casings on, you pull it out of the lukewarm water, and then you find the end, and then I take a little bit of that water and I just kind of put it over the tube itself so that it becomes slick. Now the hardest part about this whole thing is just a lot of times is getting this casing started. So bear with me as I try and do so here, and I'll show you how it's done. So one of the key things here is to keep the casing moist as well as the tube itself. And then once you do, you can see that, just keep it kind of straight going out and just pull it onto the tube itself. But keep it moist and slow so you don't break the casing. So that's what it should look like once you get your casing on. I probably have 3, maybe 4 of the hog casings on here, and then you just tie a knot onto the end of it so that when you start cranking this and the sausage comes through, it'll start filling up. Now I leave toothpicks readily available here on the counter or on the cutting board, so that as it goes through and it starts I can see little air pockets, I'll just pick it every now and then. So there are some air pockets that come through, but for the most part, most of them come out through this little valve right here as you crank through. So let's go ahead and get started and stuff some sausage. As you can see right here, the air's coming out, and so no sausage yet, so we'll just go ahead and prick this just to get that air out, and then I'll come back. And then as it comes, we just let it go naturally. Oops, sorry. We just let it come, and there's pressure here, and I just let it fill up. And then as it comes out, I'll just keep going, and I'll let it kind of like to hold it as it comes out so I can let it fill up and then slowly come off the tube itself. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but as it comes through and it gets to a certain point, I just reach out, give it a twist. Let the next one come through. Again, I like holding it here, though it covers up what the camera can see. But I'll just do it this way for a moment. But just coming out, letting it get pretty full, because you want these to be some pretty hearty sausages. So I make them just a little bit bigger than the bun size, pull a little bit off, give it a twist. Let it come out. There we go, nice and tight like that. Give it a twist. Okay, so that's how we're going to stuff these. I'll continue on with this batch, and then I'll show you the finished product when we're done. So here you have it, 10 pounds of homemade sausage. Took me about 2 hours to do this from beginning to end, but I enjoy it. I have a product that I can serve to my family proudly, or any friends that come over, and so it was a good way to spend a Saturday afternoon. The only thing I have left to do is to package it into food saver packets so that I can freeze it, but that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment if you've got a suggestion on how I may speed up the process or do something different. Again, this is something that I self-taught and watched on YouTube, but I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something from it. So take care, God bless, and we'll see you on the next project.